Good morning and welcome to the 2024 virtual education for the Virginia Waterwell Association. We are in course number 3 for DOT compliance in the waterwell industry. This morning we have Mr. Dan Greer of Eclipse DOT. A little bit about Mr. Greer. His journey from farming to DOT compliance began with figuring on a farm in southwestern Colorado. In high school, he earned his EMT certificate and served at a local fire department, ultimately rising to the ranks of certified fire engineer and captain in a volunteer department. His career path led him to Coca-Cola, where he gained invaluable insights into last mile delivery. Later, he managed a feed mill, drawing on his upbringing in animal science and transportation knowledge to guide the company to a year with zero violations during roadside stops. Dan's expertise expanded into the construction industry, eventually landing him in a role managing regional logistics and safety for a Western U.S. equipment dealer. In 2013, he identified a shortage of CDL testers in southwestern Colorado, embarking on a challenging journey to become a third party CDL tester for the state of Colorado. After a 1.5 year battle, he achieved this goal and was approached by an energy company to develop a commercial driver training program, laying the foundation for Eclipse. Thank you, Mr. Greer, and you can have the floor.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Christina. It's great to be here today. Appreciate you guys being here and appreciate your time. I know that it's pretty early in the morning out there. I'm actually in mountain time, so it's really early in the morning for me. But this is good. I'm glad to be here. So appreciate the introduction, and we're just going to kind of roll into this. I'd like to start by just telling everybody that I'm really informal. This is a very like casual setting, and so I just want you guys to feel free, like Christina said, to throw the questions in the chat, and then we'll pause a couple times to ask some questions and go from there and answer it. Don't hesitate to ask a question because most likely, if you have a question, somebody else probably has the exact same question, and they may not be as willing as you are to put it in the chat. So don't hesitate to put it in the chat for me. First off, I'd like to give you guys just a little bit more background on who I am and get on the right thing here so my clicker will work. And before we get started with that, I'd just like to give everybody the opportunity. One of the things that we do for everybody that we serve, everybody that we get the opportunity to speak with, is we offer them what's called a micro audit. And the nice thing about this micro audit is number one, it's 100% free. Number two is what it does is it just allows somebody else to come in and kind of look at a few of your items that you might have, like a driver qualification file, vehicle maintenance file, your drug test policy, stuff like that. And even better, we're not like officers, we're not cops, we're not inspectors, we're not here to like show you you're doing something wrong. We're here to help you improve what's going on. And so just as kind of caveat, I'm going to give all these slides in a PDF version to Christina, and she could mail them out to you guys and email them out to you guys. And then that way you'll have all this stuff just so you're kind of aware. But like that QR code will take you straight to our site to where you could get one of those. Again, I'll give you a little story on this. So we actually, I did this presentation, and not this presentation, but I did a presentation for some HR people in Iowa a couple months ago. And one of their HR people actually wanted us to do this micro audit. And so they shot us an email and they're like, hey, we want to do this micro audit. And we said, cool. And so they uploaded their stuff and we started looking at it, and they were like, yeah, we're kind of new at this. We're not like DOT experts. We're not meant to be specialized in this. Like, we understand HR. That's what we understand. And I said, that's great. Not a problem with that at all. So we started going through their stuff, and then we had like a 30-minute Zoom call with them afterwards. After we went through their stuff, I think they uploaded on Thursday, and we scheduled the call for like Friday or something. It was like crazy fast because we were just on top of it. And we went through and we started looking at all their stuff with them. And we said, okay, so here's what a regular driver file should look like that meets regulations, and here's what yours looks like. And we kind of pointed out all the stuff that was wrong with it. And then we said, there's a couple different options, right? Like, you guys can take all this knowledge and you can fix it in-house. You can go hire somebody else to help you, or we'll give you a few of the tools for free to help you guys get where you need to be. And we're actually still working with them to try to get a little bit of their compliance up a little bit more, but they just didn't know. And that's why we offer this, is because what we've discovered is there's a lot of information in this DOT, and unless you're like really deep into DOT compliance and you actually like do it every day, it's really hard to stay on top of it. And so this is a great way for you to get a free look at where you stand. And that's why we offer this. That's why this is something that we really like to give out to people, is because it really helps them just really know where they're at and kind of where they stand, and that way they can take the right action to get going in the right direction if they need to. All right. Now, you're going to find that I like to use a little bit of humor as I go. So this isn't a like, this is a humorous slide. It's not meant to be like, oh, we're going to give you a bunch of evil stuff. No, but like, the reason for this one is because I like to like get everybody on the same page. We've got to have morals, we've got to have scruples. And so as we move forward, there's going to be a lot of information in here. Just you got to promise me that you're going to use this for good stuff. Okay. All right. So what is Eclipse DOT? What do we do? We work with companies that use trucks in their business. We don't necessarily work with trucking companies so much as we work with companies that use trucks in their business. And so think about it. If you're drilling water wells, your business isn't trucking, right? It's drilling water wells. But if you didn't have that drill rig, you probably wouldn't be able to drill water wells. If your business is delivering potable water, I don't know about y'all, but like out here in the West, we don't have as many wells. And so water delivery is a big thing out here. And so if you're delivering water, your business isn't a trucking company, it's a water delivery company. But if you didn't have trucks to deliver that water, you probably wouldn't have much business, right? And so we focus on helping businesses that use trucks in their business, but they're not really trucking companies. Like, we try to make compliance super simple. That way they can really focus on what's important, which is growing their business and building their business and, you know, all that good stuff, so they can continue to provide for the families that work for them. Christina did a great job introducing me. I'm going to add a few more things here just so you guys can kind of see a little bit about some of the stuff that I've done. I found that whenever I go to a presentation, I like to know who's talking to me. I like to know a little bit about them. And so a few personal details on myself, just so you guys kind of understand. I'm married. I've been married for 20 years this next year. We've got 4 kids. My oldest kid just enlisted in the Army. He's actually in Fort Leonard Wood right now. The one right below him is he's got his license, and my daughter below that one is getting ready to get her permit. And so I'm losing all my hair all at once just from all that good stuff, but it's good. The other thing that like I really want you guys to know is that I cut my teeth in DOT and learning DOT in the field. I started out as a driver, and then I quickly got merged into a DOT compliance role when the company that I was working for as a trainer got an audit and they failed that audit. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in just a second. That way you guys kind of know a little bit about where my background is. I should give you a quick housekeeping note. I don't read slides. So if y'all like what's on the slide, great. I'm not going to read it to you, so you might want to look them over a little bit. That's just something to learn about me. Okay, where all of it started, like Christina said, about 15 years ago, I was looking around. I was actually working for a municipality, and I was running a blade and running a truck for them. And I looked around and I said, man, there's like 2 CDL testers here in Southwest Colorado. And there's just not a lot, like there's a lot of need for CDL drivers, but it's really hard to get scheduled. They were months out on end. And so I started doing a lot of digging and figuring out what it would take to become a tester. I called in my area, like I'm in the Four Corners area. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of that area before, but like Utah's right here, New Mexico's right here, Arizona's right here, and Colorado's right here. And so I looked in all 4 of those states. I called all 4 of those states, and I figured out that I could only become a tester in the state that I held my CDL in. And so I became a tester in the state of Colorado. It took me a year and a half from when I started the journey of looking at becoming a tester and actually being certified. And then about a couple months after I got the certification, I got like 6 different offers to go to work for different companies across the nation. And they're like, hey, we need somebody to build a CDL training program for us. Well, like I said, I got 4 kids and a wife. And so when I started talking to my wife about where we should go and what we should do, she's like, I don't really want to move. Like we live on your family's homestead. Y'all have lived here for over 100 years. Like, let's stay here. And so I chose a company that was local, and they were an energy company. Um, we actually had the second largest fleet. Well, it was the largest private fleet of hydrovacs in the nation at the time. We had over, and hydrovacs are like those big old vacuum trucks. I don't know if y'all know what they are, but it's kind of what's in this picture right here. Um, we had like 48 hydrovac trucks at one time. And this was right when hydrovacs were just starting to come out. Like, this was, like I said, about 15 years ago. They'd been out, but they weren't really popular yet. And then we also did a ton of like work in the energy field. And so I went to work for them. I created a training program. I set some goals within that training program. We They said that they wanted to have like 85 drivers trained that year. That was their goal. And we hit like 110 drivers that year being trained through our program. And by the end of that year, we had 2 different uh, instructors, except for me, and then we had three nationally accredited CDL testers under our umbrella. And so we were able to grow that program for CDL training. Now, this one right here, like y'all might be like wondering, what in the world's all this colors? Well, this is where we were as a company. This is how big this company was. This is where we were spread out at. We were all over the nation, okay? And then about a year into my career, my journey with them, we'll call it, they got audited by the federal government for DOT. They came in and they did a DOT audit on them. Well, to be honest with you, I was a driver at that time, right? Like I was teaching people how to drive. I was training them. I was not worried about DOT compliance. They said, HR said, hey, fill out this paperwork. Okay. I filled out paperwork for everybody we trained and hired that came on underneath my realm of training people. But I didn't worry about the rest of it too much. Well, they got audited and they didn't fare too well. So this one day I was sitting there in my office. Well, let's be honest, it wasn't an office. I was a trainer. It was a cubicle. Okay. So I'm sitting there in my cubicle, and the owner of the company, now at the time we had about 1,200 employees. We were spread out across the nation, like you just saw. He comes in, and I've never seen the president of the company before. I've worked there for a year with 1,200 employees. It's hard to get to see every person. He comes into my office, of my cubicle, sorry, and he like stands there and he leans on it a little bit, and he goes, "You got a second, Dan? What the heck do you say when the owner of like that company comes to you? Like, we're $100 million+ a year company." And he comes in and like leans on my cubicle wall and just says, "You got a second?" Yeah, I got all the, man, you pay me. You write my check. Your signature is on my check. Of course I've got time for you, man. Come on in. Pull up this folding chair I have in a corner of my cubicle, bud. Sit down. It's nothing like your cozy office chair, but yeah, come on in. So anyways, he came in and he goes, "Well, Dan, you heard we probably got audited, right?" I was like, "Yeah, I heard we got audited. It didn't go so well." I kind of heard it didn't go so well. The guy's name's Ezra, okay? I heard it didn't go so well, Ezra. He's like, "Yeah, we actually failed miserably." I was like, "Well, that's not good. How bad is miserably?" He goes, "Well, they told us that we were 0% compliant when they left after they did all of our stuff, and that was about 45 days ago. We got the results from this audit." Okay, well, 45 days, that's not too bad. How many drivers did they say we had? Well, they said we had 765 drivers. Whoa, holy cow, like what in the world? Yep, yeah, we didn't know either. We thought we only had like 100 CDL drivers, but apparently there's a difference between CDL and commercial drivers that none of us knew about. I was like, huh, that's interesting. And then he goes, "Well, I've got a proposition for you. I'm going to give you 3 options here, Mr. Greer." And I said, "Okay, what's the 3 options?" He goes, "Well, number one, and this is the one I want you to take, by the way. I'd like you to come in and take over our DOT compliance. The guy who's running the program, he's a truck safety guy. He doesn't know much about the back end paperwork. He's not able to get us into compliance as quick as we need. They gave us 90 days, and we're 45 days into this." Okay, that sounds great. What's option number 2, right? Feel like I'm sitting there on that old game show where you're looking behind each door. He's like, well, option number 2 is, I live in Colorado, and I don't know if y'all have ever been to West Texas, but West Texas is really dusty and hot. Colorado's got beautiful mountains and blue skies and gets snow. Um, West Texas doesn't get that kind of snow. He says, option number 2 is, we've got a huge opening and need for CDL drivers in West Texas, Dan. I'd love for you to go to West Texas and drive for us if you don't want to be our DOT guy. Well, that's not really where I want to go, Ezra, but I'll keep that in mind. What's option number 3? Well, option number 3 is you go find another job. Because we're not going to continue doing training anymore, because we've just decided that we need to focus on other parts of our business. As a business owner, I totally understand where he was coming from, but before that, I really didn't. So at that point, I said, well, Ezra, would it be all right if I talk to my wife before I give you a decision? He goes, you bet. Here's my personal cell phone. You can text me before Sunday, because if you're going to go to West Texas, I need you down there by Monday afternoon, and it's a 16-hour drive from here. Okay. So I went home, and my wife and I talked about it a lot. We had a decision to make, right? So we chatted about it. And you know what our consensus was? It can't get any worse. I can't screw up the DOT any worse than it already is, because it's already at 0. So we decided that we would go ahead and stay here local instead of going to West Texas, where there's no snow and the wind blows every day and it's triple digits all summer long. We decided to stay in Colorado and then work on the DOT compliance for it. Well, I was going to work on DOT compliance. She was raising our kids pretty much. I learned so much in the first 45 days. I had no clue. I was a truck driver. I knew how to train people. I knew how to talk to people. I didn't know anything about DQ files or vehicle maintenance files, or that you had to file IFTA every quarter if you crossed state lines and had that IFTA, or you had to renew IRP plates, or what the heck any of these acronyms were. Like, I knew DOT stood for Department of Transportation. That's about all I knew when I stepped into this role. I had an idea that there was more behind it, but I didn't have the knowledge of it yet. I started digging into their audit, and I called the officers, and I did what I did best, what I'd still do best. I played dumb, man. I called them and I said, hey, what in the world is the DQ file? What does this driver qualification stand for? Like, our drivers have CDLs. And they were super nice and helped explain it all to me. And what I did from there is I got down on my knees and I begged and I pleaded for them to give us an extension, because I only had 45 days to get 700 drivers into compliance, and I knew it wouldn't happen. And so they ended up giving us a 6-month extension. Now, on top of that, they issued some fines with our audit, and they issued us a little over $185,000 in fines, which was going to pretty much cripple our company. Okay. That's a lot of money to give the federal government in fines. I started having conversations with the officers and with the federal government and everybody who was involved in this audit. And we started negotiating. We started talking about stuff and how we're going to make a difference. And we started putting an action plan in place. And after we got the action plan in place, by the end of that 6-month period, they gave us a grace period of 6 months to pay the bill as well. When it's that big, they'll work with you. And we were able to get it to under $50,000, which was a huge win, not only for me personally, because it was the first time I dealt with like negotiations with auditors and government agencies and stuff like that, but it was also a huge win for the company, because we were able to cut the bill down to less than a third of what it was. It was actually probably closer to like 25% of what it was originally, which is huge. Okay. Huge for the company. Shortly after that, I got a little bit better relationship with Ezra after that. I got to see him a little bit more often, the owner of the company. Shortly after that, he walks into my office and he says, Dan, we're thinking about selling the company, but here's the thing. They need you on their team because they already own 6 more companies, and they want to incorporate you into that, and they want you to run all the compliance for all of their companies. And I said, man, where are they based out of? They're not based out of here. Like, how much am I gonna, like, do I have to move to Houston where they're based out of? Like, what's gonna happen now? Because I'm pretty happy living on my family's old homestead. I got a lot of close family and stuff like that here. And they said, well, no, you don't have to move, but you get to travel a little bit more. I said, okay, well, how much is a little bit? He's like, oh, they'll just need you in Houston like 1 week a month. It's not a big deal. Okay, sweet. Well, that turned into being home about 1 week a month after that when I went to work for them, because everybody was in the same place that Crossfire was at whenever I first started doing their compliance. All their driver files were a mess. They were getting pulled over at roadside ports and getting inspections all the time. They were all failing stuff, like nothing was going good. And our DOT department didn't have a good relationship with the field. Nobody knew anything about regulations in the field. And so I made it my personal goal to go out and educate all of these companies across the country, all about like getting all the way down to the drivers and educating the drivers on DOT stuff. And so I was literally leaving every Friday, every Monday morning, I'd jump on a plane and I'd head out. And then every Friday I'd be flying back home, and I was always in a different place. If it was Mississippi or Virginia or West Virginia or Tennessee or North Dakota, I'll tell you, the worst, I'll state climate shock I've ever had was I flew out to North Dakota on January 3rd, and the high out there when I was there was 5 below zero. I went straight from there to Houston, Texas for a week. And the high in Houston was 90 that week I was there. And then I came back to Colorado, and the high in Colorado was like 45. And then from there, I went to Mississippi, and the high down there was like 93 in January. And all this happened within a month. My body didn't know what the heck to do from traveling so much from all these different places. I digress. From there, I said, hey, man, we really got to come up with a better way to manage DOT, because I was doing like 1,000, 1,100 drivers, 1,200 drivers all on a spreadsheet. And it was just, it was wearing me out. I was out in the field for 6 hours a day, talking to leadership for 2 hours a day. And then I'd be back in my hotel room at night doing DOT compliance for like another 2 or 3 hours a night. And so I'd shut my computer off at 9:30 and I'd be up at 4 o'clock in the morning catching back up with stuff so I could send out emails to everybody and text messages to try to get the documents that I needed. It was just too hard to manage. And so at that point, that's when I started to think about a dashboard that would actually do all the work for me and how I could serve more companies. And that's when we built DotDocs. Okay. DotDocs is a one-of-a-kind software. There's nothing like it in the industry that actually notifies drivers and notifies admins whenever there's a problem. So like 30 days before medical card expires, the driver gets an email from the software that says, hey, your med card's going to expire. Think about going and getting that thing renewed, right? And it does the same thing. It'll send it to the admin of the account, which is crazy nice, okay? Now, I kind of, from there, I've started Eclipse DOT. I got out of the business because I was traveling too much. And let's not talk about my schedule right now because it's pretty crazy. But like I said, man, I'm traveling too much. I'm missing my kids growing up. And so we started Eclipse DOT. We built DotDocs. And now then we get to serve a lot of smaller companies. So instead of serving one big company, now then we serve hundreds of small companies. And we give the small companies the same advantage that the big companies do. Because here's the thing. A lot of companies can't afford to have somebody just doing DOT compliance that makes a really good salary, like really good salary. When you're doing that for a really big company, like it's good because they know how much money you're saving them in the long run. But smaller companies with less than 1,000 people, they don't have that same advantage, right? And so what we've done is we've given that same underdog advantage to all of the smaller companies. We help companies that are local. We help companies that run across state lines. We help companies that stay within a state. But what that does is that allows them to have the same advantage as everybody else does, which is great because now then small companies can focus on what they need to do, which is grow their business, and we can help them. Right? We can help them manage the stuff that they don't need to like really worry about. So I told you all that so y'all would believe I know what I'm talking about and we can get into business. Y'all ready to actually get into compliance now? Sweet. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some really good high quality reading material. And I promise, if you can't sleep at night, you can just scan this QR code. It'll take you straight to federal regulations. Within 15 minutes, you'll be out cold all night long, because these things, oh man, they are like crazy. But this QR code will take you straight to the federal regs for DOT compliance. I don't want y'all hunting for them. I don't want you getting out any kind of books. I just want you to be able to go straight to them. Okay. Now, here's my goal for today. I'm just going to be real honest with you guys. I want to show you how simple compliance is when you have the right tools. All right. I want to show you that compliance can be really complicated, but if you have the right tools in place, it's never easier. Like, you'll never find an easier time to do it. All right. Has anybody here ever wrenched on anything? Has anybody ever tried to fix something? Okay, maybe a few of you have. I'm not a mechanic, but my entire family is mechanics. To give you a little bit more background, my dad just retired from being a mechanic. He worked for the same shop for 45 years. He worked for Caterpillar, and his whole job was rebuilding engines. They'd tear out an engine and bring it to him, and he'd tear it down to nothing and build it back up to being able to run. And my brother's been with Caterpillar for like 25 years now. Me, I never got, I guess maybe I didn't want to get my hands dirty, or I didn't want to do the same thing they were doing. I don't know. I just had to be different. But my transmission went out on one of my pickups, and I said, oh, my family's mechanics. I can do this. No problem. So I get in there and I start changing the transmission. And I don't know if any of y'all have ever done this before, but for a real mechanic, somebody knows what they're doing. It's about a 6-hour job to swap out a transmission, just to pull it out, stab the new one in. Like, it's not a hard job. Okay. It takes a little bit of time, but it's not something that's like days. Okay. This job took me 3.5 weeks because I didn't have the right tools. There was 2 bolts on the very top of the bell housing up underneath between the engine and like a spot. And I couldn't get my hand up there to get a wrench on them to save my life. And, so finally, after about 3 nights of messing with these 2 stinking bolts, I called my brother. I broke down and I was like, I'm going to call the guy who's done this a couple times. So I called him and I was like, hey, dude, how do I get these 2 bolts out on the top of the bell housing? He goes, oh, it's simple. You just take 2 extensions and 2 wobble joints and you put them on the end of your ratchet and you just put it up there. And I was like, wait, wobble joint? Extension? I'm trying to get a wrench up there. What you talking about, bud? And he's like, no, you just got to have the right tools, man. And I was like, oh, can I borrow yours for a night? He's like, yeah, you can borrow them tonight, but I got to have them in the morning. So I ran up to his house. He lives a couple miles away. I ran up to his house. I grabbed the tools. I came back down. Dude, within 20 minutes, both those bolts were out. By the end of the night, I had the whole new transmission stabbed in there. Like, literally, I had spent so much time trying to get, like, because I didn't have the right tools, right? And so that's when I learned that, like, when you get the right tools, the job isn't hard. And so my goal today is to give you the tools that you can have and give you the knowledge so that you can make sure that you're on the right page for DOT compliance. Cool. Let's talk about regulations. Regulations change constantly. I want you to realize this. They're like, every single year, parts of the regulations change. Now, not like the big bulk of the regulations change, but parts of them change. So you're going to see times where, like, at the end of the and so I'm not going political here. Don't take this as a political statement. At the end of the Obama era, there was a huge regulation change his last year in office. Okay, and then during the Trump era, the regulations kind of decreased just a little bit, but they didn't actually like go away. They just take away a few of the lines within them. And then now we're seeing another increase in regulation against trucking companies, just a few, like not a lot, but a couple. Okay, and so regulations kind of, they go up and down, they ebb and flow. And so they change a little bit. So the way to have the right tool on this is to make sure that you're following somebody who actually talks about regulations when it comes to DOT, right? It's kind of like taxes. You're not going to go out and follow all of the tax code unless you're like a CPA, right? But we are going to call a CPA to ask them questions when we get ready to file our taxes, or like a tax advisor, at least, depending on what our taxes are, okay? Now, a lot of times what happens is that change in frequency, change in regulation will cause a crisis within the industry. One of the big crises right now that's being realized, and it took about 2.5 years to really for the industry to feel it, is the ELDT, entry-level driver training rule, taking effect. So the entry-level driver training rule says that anybody who wants to get their CDL or upgrade their CDL has to go through entry-level driver training with somebody who's certified to do it. Well, to begin with, it was like, oh man, this is a big deal. And there was a huge crisis around that. Well, now it's kind of leveled out. But now what companies are finding is that instead of it taking, what they used to be able to do with just a little bit of like training in-house, now they have to go find somebody else who can do it. And then they have to send their driver to them, and it's costing them a pile of money to get people CDLs. And what does that mean? Well, that means that less companies are helping their drivers get promoted to getting CDLs. That means there's less drivers on the road, because drivers aren't going to go out and get that CDL on their own about a lot of times. Okay, they're gonna wait for the company to do it, or they're going to say, I don't need a CDL to drive this. So that's causing an even bigger shortage in drivers within our area. And I don't know if y'all see a shortage of drivers, but I do with about 90% of the companies that I work with. I'd say more like 95% of the companies that I work with. Everybody always, they send me an email like once a month. Hey, I need drivers. You know of any good drivers? Dude, I wish I did. Everybody's asking me for good drivers right now. I could like sell drivers to you just like nothing else, man. But I don't have that many people who have a CDL who are looking for jobs, right? They're getting fewer and far between. So my thing here is, I don't want you to let crisis or change in regulations cause a crisis within your business. I want to help you guys be prepared before it gets there. Now, I've got to give you this disclaimer as well. You're not going to learn everything today. We've got 2 hours. I still learn stuff, and I've been in the industry for 15 years, and like my life is dedicated to DOT and business right now. Like that's it. That's where I go. That's what I do. That's what I learn. I actually read some of those regulations when they come out, which is crazy. I know most people are like, man, that's nuts. But like when a new regulation comes out, I want to know what it's about. But don't expect to learn everything today in these couple hours, okay? I don't want you to feel like, oh, Dan cheated me. I don't know everything about DOT after 2 hours worth of training. I really just want you guys to get a good basic understanding of it and to get the next step that you're going to take, okay? All right, let's start with what the definition of a regulated vehicle is. So a regulated vehicle, and this is a federal definition. Keep in mind that each state has different definitions. If you're operating within a certain state and you don't cross state lines, you can actually qualify for what's called intrastate, but we're going to talk about that here in a second, okay? So the federal definition of a vehicle is pretty much any vehicle that is rated over 10,000 pounds, okay? Now, where do we find the rating for a vehicle? It's on the VIN tag in the door. So you open up the driver's side door, and there'll be a tag in there from the manufacturer, and it has the VIN number on it. And it will also, on that VIN number, it will say GVWR, gross vehicle weight rating, okay? Now that GVWR is what the manufacturer claims that vehicle can haul, and you're not supposed to go over that weight rating on that vehicle, okay? Now, Iowa's got a really weird rule about GVWR, and that's why I put this in here to show you that like not every state's the same. So Iowa's got this really funky rule. It says that you're not a commercial vehicle if just the power unit is under 26,000 pounds, you're not a commercial vehicle. But if you're pulling a trailer, it's like a pickup pulling this trailer here, if the power unit is over 10,000 pounds and the combination is over 10,000 pounds, then you're a commercial vehicle. But like if it's just the trucks, like you unhook that truck and trailer, that's not a commercial vehicle in Iowa, which is a really crazy rule. I know y'all are in Iowa, but I wanted to show you like different states have different rules, because Pennsylvania has a rule that's really weird as well. And I know y'all are probably pretty close to Pennsylvania. Okay, so let's talk about the basics. Interstate commerce is when vehicles cross state lines. Do any of y'all cross state lines with your trucks, even like with pickups, or do y'all stay within one state? You probably cross state lines, huh? A lot of you? Yeah, okay, cool. So if you're crossing state lines, if the GVWR is over 10,000 pounds, you're considered a commercial vehicle. Now, not all commercial vehicles are required to have a CDL to drive it. I want you to understand that, okay? We're going to go over CDLs here in just a second, all right? Now, if you stay intrastate within one state, every state is different. So like some states operate under federal rules. Like let's take Utah, for example, or Ohio, for an example. Those two states are 10,000 pound states. That means that if you're rated over 10,000 pounds in Utah or in Ohio, or a whole bunch of other states that are on there, like Arkansas is another one, you're a commercial vehicle. Now, Colorado is different, okay? Pennsylvania, Connecticut, they're different as well. Colorado says until you reach 16,001 pounds, you're not a commercial vehicle, okay? And Pennsylvania, I think, is 17,000. I think Connecticut's 18,000. So like if you're operating intrastate within those states, you're not a commercial vehicle until you hit those weight ratings. Now, keep in mind, that's not your actual scale weight. That's what you're rated to haul. Two completely different topics here, okay? What you could have a 1-ton pickup that's rated at 11,500 pounds, okay? And you could be crossing state lines, and that would be a commercial vehicle. But when you run it across the scale, that truck may only weigh 8,000 pounds. It might weigh less than that, okay? So it doesn't matter what you weigh. It's all based on what you're rated to carry, what the manufacturer says you can haul. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Clear as mud, right? All right. Now, if you're operating in intrastate, there are some states like Nebraska, Wisconsin, South Dakota, Texas, New Mexico. Like they say you're not a commercial vehicle until you hit 26,000 pounds. So until you're required to have a CDL to operate that vehicle, as long as you're operating intrastate within the state, you're not crossing state lines, you're actually not a commercial vehicle. Kind of crazy, right? That's good. Like it's just a little bit confusing when you start getting into all this and trying to understand it. Okay, Minnesota and Illinois, there's like Ohio, Utah. I'm almost positive one of the Virginias is in there, but I think I got a slide that comes up in just a second that talks about it. If you're rated at that 10,000 pound limit, they follow federal rules. So they say anything over 10,000 pounds is a commercial vehicle. Now, if your vehicle is rated at like 10,000 pounds even, a lot of 3/4 ton pickups are rated at 10,000 pounds even. That's not a commercial vehicle because it's 10,000 pounds even. It's anything over 10,000 pounds. So if that truck was rated at 10,001 pounds, it would be a commercial vehicle. That's why most companies, most manufacturers like Ford and Dodge, I guess GM's another one of those manufacturers, they rate their vehicles at 10,000 pounds even. Okay, that way it's not a commercial vehicle. So one of the things that you want to track in DOT and for your company is what are my vehicles actually rated at? What does the VIN sticker say they're rated in? Okay. Let's talk for a second about interstate versus intrastate. Interstate, and the way I remember this is interstate highways cross state lines. Like I-25 goes all the way across the nation and it never changes numbers. Okay, that'd be an interstate. So interstate travel is when you're crossing state lines. Now, the federal definition of this gets a little bit more encompassing, and it says if your product is manufactured in another state and delivered in this state, that would still be interstate commerce, even if you only stay within the state. What I'm going to say is don't get too caught up in that right now. What I want you guys to really focus on is, are my wheels of my vehicles crossing state lines? Okay. And if they are, then you operate in interstate commerce. Now, the thing to keep in mind with this is you may have one vehicle that stays intrastate and another vehicle that's interstate. That's perfectly fine. You may even have a vehicle that stays intrastate for months and then goes interstate just for a day. That's okay. You still need to be registered as an interstate carrier with the federal government. So your DOT number needs to be an interstate DOT number, and you need to have a US in front of the DOT on your vehicles. But you don't have to follow interstate rules all the time if you're operating your business in an intrastate capacity most of the time. Only during that trip that's an interstate trip would you operate under the interstate rules. So, good example. Everybody knows Texas is big. So we'll use Texas as an example. if I've got a business that's in Dallas, like right in the heart of Texas, right in the center of it, I may never be in interstate commerce. I may only be in intrastate commerce. But if I have one or two trucks, or I make one or two trips a year to Oklahoma City to pick up product, or maybe over to Shreveport, Louisiana, or wherever I'm going, right? That would be an interstate trip. So I need to be registered as an interstate company during that time. Okay. Not only that, that driver, when he does interstate, he falls under the interstate rules. So he falls under all the federal rules. Otherwise, that driver would still fall under the state of Texas rules because he's intrastate. He stays within the state that he's operating in. And I'm going to muddy the waters a little bit here to make it a little bit more confusing. Okay. It can also be based on trip. So let's say that I've got a driver that we're going to use that same Texas, Oklahoma situation since we've already talked about it. Let's say he drives from Dallas and I've got a shop in Oklahoma City. So on Monday, he drives from Dallas to Oklahoma City. And then he spends the next 2 weeks in Oklahoma City and he never leaves the state of Oklahoma. He would only be an interstate driver the day that he goes from Texas to Oklahoma City. He would be falling under Oklahoma's intrastate rules while he stays in the state of Oklahoma. Okay. See how it gets a little confusing when you start talking about all this stuff? I will tell you this. If you follow the federal regulations, you'll be just fine. Nobody can be any stricter than the federal regulations are for commercial vehicles. So as long as you follow the federal regulations, you will be perfectly okay with everything that you do, no matter what state you're in, no matter what you're doing. And so for a lot of this, we're not going to be talking about state by state because some states have different rules. I'm going to give you guys the federal regulations. That way you've got a baseline of where you need to be no matter where you're at. So you may have like another interesting rule is, and this comes from Iowa. Okay. Iowa says that if you're an intrastate driver and you don't cross state lines ever, not even for emergencies or anything like that, you don't have to have a DOT medical card to have a CDL. Interesting fact. A lot of liability on the company for not having your driver have a med card, but some companies choose to go that way. And then if they ever want to send that driver in an interstate trip for any reason, even for a declaration of emergency, now they've got to go get that driver a med card and they've got to beef up his driver file to be federally compliant. So that's why my recommendation is just stick with the federal guidelines for like everything you do, and then utilize the exemptions for each state when you're in that situation. But if your baseline is the federal rules and the federal regulations, you'll like always, this is going to come off wrong maybe, you'll never be caught with your pants down, okay? As long as you utilize the federal rules. Okay, y'all have any questions on inter versus intrastate commerce? Clear as mud? I know, right? I'm pretty good about that. I'm just joking. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about GVWR, gross vehicle weight rating. So like I said, GVWR can be found on the VIN tag of the truck. It can also be found on the VIN tag of the trailer. Now, if you have homemade trailers, then it's going to go off of the axle weight rating on that trailer. Okay. Some companies make their own trailers and they choose not to put VIN tags on them. Most states require you give it a VIN, even if it's a homemade trailer. My suggestion is also to give it a GVWR when you give it a VIN, what it's rated at. Now, again, this is what the manufacturer says the vehicle can weigh, not its actual weight. Okay. I can't say that enough. So I've had so many people call me and they're like, Dan, I bought this new 1-ton pickup and I pull this trailer and empty. I only weigh 9,000 pounds. I'm not a commercial vehicle, right? Wrong. Because the trailer you bought is rated at 15,000 pounds and the 1-ton pickup you bought is rated at 11,500 pounds. You're a commercial vehicle. You're actually required to have a CDL to drive that vehicle because it's over 26,000 pounds. So not only are you a commercial vehicle, you got to have a CDL to operate that rig, even though it's just a pickup pulling a bumper pull trailer. Because it's over the 26,000, it requires a CDL. We're going to get into that in a minute. Okay, so GVWR is what the vehicle is rated to carry, not its actual weight. Now, GCWR, gross combined weight rating, that's what the truck, the power unit, plus the trailer is rated to carry. Okay. And what that means is that if you take the truck's GVWR plus the trailer's GVWR and you add those together, you get GCWR, gross combined weight rating. Now, a lot of y'all, if you're not in the field, if you're not in operations, maybe you're in HR, maybe you're in safety, maybe you're in fleet, I don't know, but you might be asking, Dan, why does this matter to me? Why is this important? Why is GVWR and GCWR and interstate and intrastate important? Here's why. Because they're going to look to you for guidance. They're going to look to you and say, hey, is this a commercial driver? Because they don't know. They may not understand, like they may know what GVWR is, but they may not understand that anything over 10,000 pounds is a commercial vehicle. Okay. They may not know that. And so you might be like, dude, you know those 1-ton pickups we're buying? Those by themselves are commercial vehicles if we're crossing the state lines. And they may not know that. And so I like to inform people so they can kind of help educate the people they're working there with, because that reduces liability risk on the companies that they're working for, which is really what we're after. Okay. Well, that and getting long weekends, right? We're all after that. Okay. Any questions on GCWR versus GVWR? If you have them, throw them in the chat, and then we'll answer questions here in just a little bit. Okay. This flow chart is amazing. I love this flow chart. I know it's a lot of lines. It's a little confusing, but it's one of my favorite flow charts that I have. My CDL one's my second favorite one. My post-accident drug test is also a good one too, just so y'all are aware. This tells you whether you're a regulated vehicle, and you literally just answer the question. So the first question you got to ask yourself, am I using this vehicle for business? Okay. Am I trying to make money using this vehicle? So let's take an example that may not be related to water wells, but maybe y'all can use it to kind of think about this. Let's say that I'm in Virginia and I decide that I'm going to start a lawn mowing business because there's lots of money mowing lawns for people. Okay. That's what I think. I don't know if there is or not. That's what I think there is. Okay. So I go out and I buy me a 1/2-ton pickup. Okay. My 1/2-ton pickup, we'll say it's rated at 7,000 pounds. And then I'm going to go out, I'm going to buy me a trailer to pull my lawnmower on so I don't have to unload it and offload it off of my pickup all day long. And my trailer is rated at 8,000 pounds because it's got a, I don't know, maybe it's got a 6,000 pound axle underneath it and it's got some bumper weight on it. I don't know. So my truck is rated at 8,000 pounds. My trailer is rated at 8,000 pounds. I'm in Virginia doing this. Okay. Not West Virginia, just Virginia. And I've got really good business in Virginia mowing lawns. I'm rated over 10,000 pounds right now because my truck and my trailer together are over 10,000 pounds. Now, if it's just my truck, it's 8,000 pounds. So it's not going to be a commercial vehicle by itself. Okay. Now, I'm over 10,000 pounds. So I'm down to the next question. Does this unit have a GCWR, gross combined weight rating, of over 10,000 pounds? The answer is yes, it does. So now I go down to the next question, the one on the very bottom. Are you operating in like interstate commerce? Are you crossing state lines? Okay, no, I'm not crossing state lines. I'm staying straight in Virginia. Okay, is my state on this list over here? If I look down here, Arkansas, California, Georgia, Illinois, Kentucky, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Oregon, Rhode Island, Utah, West Virginia. All those are 10,000 pound states. Okay. So those guys follow federal regulations almost to a T. They're like, hey, this is where everything is. We're just going to do this. It's way easier. Now, remember, I'm operating in Virginia, not West Virginia. Okay. In Virginia, am I a commercial vehicle? No. So I follow this little one and this little no in the middle that comes out of that. And it's a black line. And it says, am I hauling hazardous materials? My lawnmower is not hazardous material. So the answer to that is no. My truck only has 4 passengers in it. So the answer to that is no. So I take no, and it says I'm non-regulated. Follow that red half circle back up to non-regulated out of that. Now, that's my business, okay? I run that business for a year or two. It's going really good. And I look across the border to West Virginia, and I go, man, there's a lot of good lawns over there. I want to move into West Virginia and start mowing lawns, okay? And I know this isn't water well related, okay? But follow me here for a second. So I take my business, I go, I'm going to expand into West Virginia. One day a month, I'm going to go start mowing lawns in West Virginia. All right. That one day a month that I go to West Virginia, because I'm crossing state lines, I'm now a commercial vehicle in that same exact rig. So whereas in Virginia, I was not a commercial vehicle, because now I'm crossing state lines, I am a commercial vehicle. I've got to have a DOT number, a driver file, a DOT med card, like safety stuff on my rig. All that stuff has to be there, and I have to be compliant with federal regulations, because now I'm operating in interstate commerce. I'm crossing state lines. So if I go through the same flow chart again, am I trying to make money using my half-ton pickup pulling a trailer with lawnmowers on it? Yes. Is it over 10,000 pounds? Yes. Am I crossing state lines? Yes. I am required to be in compliance. Do you see how nice this flow chart is? You can just kind of answer the questions and work your way through it. Not to mention, over here on this side, it gives you all them states that are 10,000 pound states anyways. So, if you're operating in intra-state commerce, not crossing the state lines, and, Minnesota or New York, New York's a pretty big state. You can probably not cross state lines if you're like in upstate New York, and you'll be okay. And then, like I told you, the 3 states on the bottom, they're really weird because, some of us just got to be different than everybody else. Colorado, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania, you're not a commercial vehicle in those states until you hit those weights. Now, the thing to remember is this entire list is disregarded once you start crossing state lines. If that trip crosses state lines from even in 26,000 pound states. So notice that New Mexico is not on the list for 10,000 pound states, and neither is Texas. Those states touch, okay? If I make a trip from West Texas to New Mexico, I'm now in interstate commerce. My weight rating to be a commercial vehicle is 10,000 pounds, okay? Even though both states are 26,000 pound states. Because I'm operating in interstate commerce, I'm required to follow federal regulations, which is 10,000 pounds to be a commercial vehicle. All right. Does that make sense? Cool. Christina, I want to pause for a second. Do we have any questions so far or not really?
Nothing in the chat room. If anyone does have a question, though, feel free to unmute yourself, but nothing in the chat.
Cool. I just don't want to leave people hanging in the wind if they're sitting there wanting to ask questions about stuff. This information is like, sometimes it can be overwhelming for sure. So if y'all have questions, don't hesitate to ask, okay? Cool. Well, we'll move on to this next one. This is a CDL, okay? This is our CDL flow chart, and it's pretty easy to follow as well. You just answer the questions for each one and move your way through it. Now, what this chart doesn't have that it should have is an endorsement section. So y'all might work with tankers endorsements, and so we'll talk about those in a second. So let's talk a little bit about CDLs first. There's 3 classes of CDLs. There's Class A, Class B, and Class C. Okay? A Class A CDL is anything that pulls a trailer. Well, pretty much anything. There's a stipulation in there. We're going to talk about it. Okay? A Class B CDL is a straight truck, no trailers. A Class C CDL is anything that would require a CDL that isn't rated at least 26,001 pounds or more. Okay? So like if you had a minibus that was rated at 14,500 pounds, but it carried 16 or more passengers, including the driver, that would be a Class C CDL. And it would also have a P endorsement on it for passengers. Okay? Now let's back up and let's talk about Class A CDLs. So a Class A CDL is any vehicle that's a combination. So a truck and a trailer, a pickup and a trailer, that's rated over 26,000 pounds together, GCWR, gross combined weight rating, okay? So now there's a stipulation here. The stipulation is that the trailer has to be rated at least 10,000 pounds in order for it to be considered a Class A vehicle. Now I'm going to run an example or two here for you, okay? So example 1, okay? Let's say that I've got a 1-ton pickup. It's rated at 11,500 pounds. And let's say I put a gooseneck trailer behind it that's rated at 22,000 pounds. We'll say 22.5, okay? So 11.5 plus 22.5 is 34,000 pounds, if my math is right. It might be wrong. I always said I was good at numbers in my head. Okay, so 34,000 pounds. All right. Am I required to have a CDL to operate that 1-ton pickup pulling that gooseneck trailer? The answer is yes, because the combined weight rating is over 26,000 pounds and I'm using it for business. Okay. If it's for recreational purposes, a whole different story, but that's like a whole different section. So if we're using it for business and it's rated over 26,000 pounds, even if it's just a pickup pulling a trailer, okay? Now let's run a different math equation here. Let's say that I got a 550 and it's rated at 19,500 pounds, okay? And let's say I'm pulling a 12,000 pound trailer behind it to haul like, I don't know, supplies on, maybe a skid steer or something like that, okay? So I've got my 550, it's rated at 19.5, and I've got my 12,000 pound trailer. That's 19.5 plus 12,000 would be 31,000 pounds. And I've got 500 pounds on top of that, so it'd be 31,500 pounds altogether. Is that required to have a CDL to drive? The answer is yes. It would be required to have a CDL to drive, and it would be a Class A because it's a truck and a trailer, and the combination weight rating is over 26,000 pounds, and the trailer is rated over 10,000 pounds. Now I'm going to give you another example. This one doesn't happen very often, but I like to give it to people so they can kind of think about it. Okay, I've got a dump truck that's rated at 54,000 pounds. Okay, it's got 3 axles on it. It's a dump truck. It's rated at 54,000 pounds. I've got a trailer that I'm pulling. It's a little small trailer. I'm just going to pull a little air compressor out to the job site with me, and my trailer's rated at 3,500 pounds. It's only got 1 axle on it. That'd look really funny pulling an air compressor with a dump truck, but we're going to say it happens, okay? So I've got my dump truck that's rated at 54,000 pounds. I've got my air compressor that's rated at 3,500 pounds. So 54,000 plus 3,500 is 57,500 pounds. All right? Okay, good. Whew. Thought I could do math that little today. Okay, so 57,500 pounds. What type of CDL is required to operate that rig? It's only a Class B. And I'll tell you why it's only a Class B. So it's a Class B because the combined weight rating, the truck's rating is over 26,000 pounds, right? But the trailer's rating is under 10,000 pounds. So because the trailer is under 10,000 pounds, even though it's a combination and it hooks together, it's still only a Class B CDL. Okay, I got one more for you, okay? I got a 3/4 ton pickup. It's rated at 10,000 pounds even, okay? So it's a non-commercial vehicle by itself. Now I take that first trailer we had, that gooseneck rated at 22.5, and I hook it up to that 3/4 ton pickup, okay? 32,500 pounds is what I'm rated at. Is a CDL required to operate that rig? The answer is yes, it is, because it's over 26,000 pounds and the trailer is over 10,000 pounds. Okay. All right. That's a Class A CDL. One more. Let's swap that trailer out. We take that trailer to the job site and we pick up the little light trailer. I've got a 10,000 pound 3/4 ton pulling a 10,000 pound trailer. Is a CDL required to operate that vehicle? The answer is no, because it's under 26,000 pounds and the trailer is 10,000 pounds or less. Okay. I got one more and then I promise I'm going to stop talking about Class A CDLs. I got my 550. Actually, let's say a 1 ton. I'll say a 550. It's rated at 19,500 pounds. And I hook up to a trailer that's rated at 10,000 pounds even. I grab that same trailer that 3/4 ton was just pulling. Okay. And I'm hooked up to it. So my GCWR is now 19 plus 10. So that's 29,500 pounds. Okay. It's over 26,000 pounds. Am I required to have a CDL to operate that vehicle? A lot of people would say yes, but the answer is actually no, because the trailer is under 26,000 pounds and or under 10,000 pounds. Sorry. The trailer is under 10,000 pounds and the power unit is under 26,000 pounds. So even though the combination is over 26,000 pounds, because the trailer is under 10,000 pounds, it doesn't go toward the CDL classification. Okay. Now I can promise you that if this happens and you get an officer who may not be like really experienced, you might still get a citation for not having a CDL in this rig. Okay. It's happened before. We can fight those from the back end. It's not that big of a deal. Okay. All right. Class B CDL is a lot more straightforward. Any vehicle that's rated over 26,000 pounds that's not pulling a trailer. Okay. If you pull a trailer, as long as the trailer is rated under 10,000 pounds, you're okay. It might be a Class B vehicle as long as the tractor is over 26,000 pounds. Okay. Or the truck or whatever. School buses, passenger vehicles, those each require their own endorsements to operate. And hazardous materials is any vehicle you're operating that requires a placard on it to be operated. So let's say that I go out and I've got a contract to haul uranium from Moab, Utah to New York. I don't know why I'm hauling it there, but that's my contract. And I say, oh, I'm going to do really good. I'm going to go buy myself a Toyota Prius and I'm going to save a lot of money on fuel. Because I'm still hauling something that's placardable, I have to placard that vehicle. So that makes that a commercial vehicle. So I would actually have to have a Class C CDL with a hazardous materials endorsement to drive that Prius down the road. Kind of funny, huh? Okay, let's move on from this. Some other endorsements to talk about before we get into this next one would be like the tanker's endorsement, the N endorsement. Anytime you're operating a vehicle that has a tank capacity of over 1,000 gallons, a tanker's endorsement is required. Okay. And then doubles and triples, anytime you're pulling more than one trailer, you would have to have a T endorsement for doubles and triples. All right. This guy right here will get you 4 free posters that we've designed. They're absolutely amazing. All those flow charts I just told you guys about, they're laid out super easy to follow with this QR code. Again, we're going to get this stuff to you guys so you can have a PDF version of it. I didn't talk to Christina. I'm kind of putting her on the spot, but I'll bet that she'll email it out for us. So that way you guys can have access to this information. All right, let's get into compliance. I know this is what y'all are really excited about, right? What's required for compliance. So the first thing we're going to talk about, this first section over here, is vehicle maintenance files. This is what's required to have in your vehicle maintenance files for every single vehicle that you operate. All right, now the next column over is general requirements. This is what's required if you operate commercial vehicles at all. This is what you got to have, okay? The next one over is hours of service. Now, a lot of y'all probably operate under what's called an exemption for hours of service, like short haul exemption or stuff like that. And that's where you stay within 150 air mile radius. And we talk more about that here in just a little bit. All right. Now, the next one is the driver qualification file. This is my bread and butter, man. This is my knowledge base. I know about all this other stuff, but like this is where I cut my teeth in DOT, is on this driver qualification file. Now, if you notice, the very top one is a driver packet. Do you see that? This last column over here, that's everything that's required to be in the driver packet. Do you see how compliance can be a little bit overwhelming? That very far column that says driver packet on it is just the very first check mark on the driver qualification file. It's not like quite as plain and simple as it looks here, but this is everything you need to be in compliance, okay? Now, the driver packet, I'll tell you, this is where a lot of people go wrong, is simply on the application. They may not have their company name listed, or they may not have 10 years of previous work history, or 3 years of previous address for the employee, or the driver's license state, or they may not ask them specific questions for each employer, right? There's a lot of stuff in here that's required just to be in the driver packet. And this is where a lot of the mistakes are. When we got audited a long time ago, whenever I was working for that one company and we got audited, this is where the majority of the problem was we didn't have we didn't know who was a commercial driver, number one. Number two, we didn't have driver applications filled out correctly for anybody. We didn't have 10 years of previous work history, or maybe there was gaps in the history that wasn't accounted for, right? Or maybe we didn't have their original driver's license from when they started working for us. Our big failure was driver qualification files. And what I've noticed is that that's where most people struggle the most at, is DQ files. Vehicle maintenance files, I'm going to give you guys a tip. Don't ever pay somebody else to handle your vehicle maintenance files. You're going to do all the work anyways. Just get somebody who can help give you guidance on what needs to be in them and how to structure them. DQ files are slightly different because you can get a lot of that weight off of you. But with vehicle maintenance files, like, let's face it, if I said, hey, pay me some money and I'll manage all your vehicle maintenance files, you'd have to send me everything anyways, right? There would be nothing that you could actually get. Like, I can't go get any of that stuff anywhere else. So you're still managing all the workload for vehicle maintenance files, even if you're paying somebody else to do them. And so my recommendation for vehicle maintenance files is do them in-house, but get a little bit of training on them because you're going to be doing all the work on them anyways. Okay. All right. Let's talk about the DQ file. So the first thing that needs to be in the DQ file, driver qualification file. Sorry. Sometimes, guys, I get like lost in acronyms because like my whole world is acronyms. I don't know if y'all have that problem, but like literally DOT is an acronym. So if I get lost in acronyms, just be like, hey, tell me what's that mean? Okay. Tell me and I'll be happy to answer that question for you. So DQ file or driver qualification file. You're required to have a motor vehicle report. This is just a driving record. That's what it is. So you go to the state, you pull the driving record for that employee. The original from when they first started working for your company. And then after they've been with you, you're going to pull one every single year. So you have to keep the original from when they worked with you. And then you got to have the last 3 years of MVRs in your DQ file. Okay. Now, a lot of people look at this past 3 years and they're like, how do I get the past 3 years of MVRs when they just started working for me? How do I get the past 3 years of driver's licenses when they just started working for me? No, this is a forward moving thing. So when you hire them, you're going to pull an MVR on them. You're going to get their driver's license. You're going to get their med card. You're going to get the driver packet. You're going to have them fill out a clearinghouse query request. You're going to have them do all this stuff. And that's the original. Okay. And then from there, you just do one every year and then you keep them. And then you're only required to keep the original from when they first started working for you in the last 3 years. So let's say, I'm going to pick on Christina because I get to see her picture. So let's say that I hired Christina to work for me as a commercial driver. Okay. She comes to work for me 10 years ago, 10 years ago on October 1st. So October 1st, 10 years ago, I'm going to pull her MVR and I'm going to put that in her file. And then every year before October 1st, I'm going to rerun her MVR. Okay. And I'm going to put that in her driver file. Now, this is the one time where more documentation is not better. Okay. I'm only going to keep, now she's been with me for 10 years. I'm not going to have 10 driver records in there. I'm not going to have 10 MVRs in her file. I'm only going to have 4. I'm going to have the original from 10 years ago, October, and then I'm going to have the last 3 years. So I'm going to have 23, 22, and 21 because it's not October yet. Okay. And then when October rolls around, I'm going to throw away 21s and I'm going to keep 24's driver record in there. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. All right, hopefully. Some of y'all are probably shaking your head no, but it's okay. It'll make sense a little bit later, I promise. Driver's license is the same way. You got to get a copy of their driver's license. Now, we're going to pick on Christina some more. Let's say that she moves a lot. And Christina lives in Virginia, and then she moves to West Virginia, and then she moves to Delaware, and then she moves to Colorado, and then she moves to New York, and then she's like, oh, I need to go home. So she moves back to Virginia, okay? And during that 10-year time span, I'm going to have the original license from Virginia in there. And then I'm only going to have the last 3 years of licenses. So if in the last 3 years she lived in New York, California, and Colorado because she moved that much, then I'm going to have all 3 of those states in there. Okay. But everything else between that, I'm not going to have. Okay. Now, there is a rule that says anybody who holds a CDL has to, within 30 days, they have to change their license to the state that they live in. So if y'all have people that move from state to state, make sure that they change their license if they've got a CDL. It's your job as a company. If you pay them and you know their address is West Virginia and their license is Virginia, you could be liable for that. Okay. So I want you to understand that as well. DOT medical card. Okay. You're going to keep the original from when you hired them plus the last 3 years. Now, this med card is usually good for about 2 years. And so you're probably going to have a couple of these in their driver file if they've been with you for 10 years. I'll probably have 3 at the maximum in my driver file, unless, maybe Christina gets high blood pressure, and so she only gets a 90-day blood card, or maybe she gets something else that only causes her to have a 1-year medical card, okay? Then I would have multiple medical cards in there. Now, here's the key that most people forget, and it's the very last line on this slide, okay? National registry number has been reviewed by the company. There's a website that you can go to for certifying and verifying the national registry card, national registry number on the med card. You're required to do that by federal law to make sure that the doctor is on the list. That way, when somebody comes into you, they're not with a med card, you're not you verified that that doctor is correct and the card is not falsified. Okay. And a lot of companies don't know to do that, so they don't do it. All right. The next thing is the driver application. This bad boy is like 6 slides in itself, but I'm just going to tell you about it. Okay. Because I didn't make 6 slides for it, so y'all would like be going to sleep on me, and I don't need that. Okay. All right. So the driver application has like 53 points that you have to hit on it in order to be compliant. And I'm going to kind of list these off real quick, but remember, they're on that other slide back there, so y'all can go back and see them. Well, most of them are on that slide, okay? It's got to have the company's name, the company's address, the driver's name, the driver's social security number, the driver's date of birth, the date the application was filled out, the driver's where they've lived for the last 3 years, their actual physical address for every place they've lived for the last 3 years, driver's license information, license number, license state, license endorsements, license expiration date, any previous experience they have operating the vehicle. Has their license ever been suspended or revoked? Have they ever been denied or rejected a license? In previous employment for the last 10 years for all CDL drivers, 3 years for all non-CDL commercial drivers. Each one of those must have the employer's name, the reason for leaving, start date and end date, just month and year, not the actual date. Okay. Location of their job, like city and state. And then you've got to ask them 2 questions for every employer. Were you subject to FMCSRs? Were you a commercial driver is really what that means. And then were you subject to Part 40, which is drug testing? All right. Were you in a DOT safety sensitive position? After that, you've got to have a signed affidavit that says all this is true and correct. What most companies miss is these next couple ones, okay? A lot of them miss the pieces within there, but they miss the driver's license statement, stating that their license is true and correct, and they're only going to hold one license, and their license is going to be in the state in which they reside, and if their license is ever denied or taken away, they won't operate any commercial vehicles for you, okay? There's another thing called a statement of hours. This is the hours they've worked within their last job for the last 7 days to makes sure that they're capable and to operate for you. Another one is a statement of hours of service, which is slightly different. It says that they're only going to work for you, and if they work for anybody else, they're going to make sure that they have enough hours before they come to work for you to operate a commercial vehicle. Okay. The next one that a lot of people they're finally starting to get is the clearinghouse consent form. And it has to have, it's a release that has to have the exact verbiage as what the Fed say it has to have. And it has to have an expiration date in this release. Okay. And the expiration date could be like 25 years from when this is signed, because most likely in 25 years, this won't be an issue anymore. I'm not going to say it won't be, but most likely there'll be different technology that takes care of that within 25 years. Okay. All right. That's the driver application. That's the driver packet. Oh, hold on. I lied. There's some more. Okay. There's also what's called a safety performance history. Now, a lot of people think that when Clearinghouse took effect, these safety performance history investigations stopped, but they didn't. What stopped was the drug and alcohol section of that form. So a lot of people call them a VOE, a verification of employment. And what it is, you send it out to the last 3 employers they worked for, and did they fail a drug test here? Okay. Now, because of Clearinghouse, you don't have to do that anymore. But you do still have to send out the SPH, Safety Performance History, which was like the bottom 2-line section of that. And you have to send that out to the previous employers where they were subject to FMCSRs for the last 3 years. So again, if I hire Christina and she worked for 7 different companies in 3 years because she didn't want to stay at the same place, okay, I would have to send that safety performance history investigation out to those 7 employers if she operated commercial vehicles for them. Does that make sense? So that's something that a lot of people have stopped because they go, oh, this went away with clearinghouse. But the truth is it didn't. It actually just changed. You still have to send it out, but it's not to like, it's not for drug test questions anymore. Now it's for accidents. Okay. All right. Certificate of violations. This has actually been null and voided. I told you that a few things have gone away, and this is one of those that's been condensed. So they used to have a certificate of violations and an annual review. Now, the certificate of violations, the driver had to sign every single year saying they've had no accidents, they've had no tickets, their license is still valid, blah, 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 blah. And what they figured out was we're pulling driver records for the drivers anyways. We know if their license is still good. We know if it's still the right CDL or if it's the right class or it has the right endorsements on it. So it's now the company's job, not the employee's job, to verify that. So the certificate of violations has been X'd out. We don't have to do that anymore. Okay. Annual reviews. So every single year, within 12 calendar months of hiring an employee, you have to do an annual review on this employee. And really what this review is it's not where you sit down and you have a conversation with the employee and you talk about their performance. No, this is pulling their driving record and making sure that they still have the same quality of license they had before, making sure they haven't been disqualified to operate commercial vehicles for you. Okay. And then you got to sign a paper. Yep, I've checked the license. It's still good. This person still has a license. They're still ready to go. They're still qualified. So the annual review is done by the company or by a representative of the company. Okay. Next is the road test. Road test is given to anybody who operates tanker vehicles and anybody who does not have a CDL and anybody who operates doubles and triples or long combination vehicles. So a road test is done in-house. Okay, it's something you can do with your people, and it's very simple. It's very easy, but it does have to meet the federal regs, and it does have to have so much stuff on it. Okay, they have like miles driven, type of vehicle driven, driver's license number, social security number, like all that stuff has to be on this form. Okay, so it has to be the exact same form that's in the federal regulations. And then it's only done, like I said, for people who don't have a CDL. So if they're operating commercial drivers, or people who are CDL holders that are operating tanker vehicles for your company, or they're operating long combination vehicles or doubles and triples. All of those need to have a road test, and they have to be in a vehicle of what they'll be driving, like what they'll be driving. It doesn't have to be the exact vehicle they're driving. So if you have a tanker truck and everybody has tanker endorsements on their license, then you would have to give road tests in all tanker vehicles. Does that make sense? Cool. Entry-level training. This is different than ELDT. Entry-level driver training. Entry-level training has been around since about 96. It's a regulation that says that you are responsible for ensuring that all employees who work for you have the proper training to operate vehicles and know the federal regulations. What that means is that you have to show them where the regulations are if they've had their CDL for less than a year. If they've had their CDL for over a year, this is not valid. It's not something that's important. It's not something you have to do. So if you hire somebody that just gets their CDL, or you promote somebody from within who doesn't have their CDL and you help them get their CDL, then you would have to put them through this entry-level training. Again, it's something you can do in-house. Don't overcomplicate it. It's not hard. If like we're doing driver files for you, it's like 3 7-minute videos, 21 minutes of their life that's gone, and it's completely done. It's all automated. We make sure it gets done. Okay. So like there's other ways to do it. There's ways around it. You don't have to like put them through a 40-hour class or anything like that. It's very simplistic. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it for the driver qualification file. Clearinghouses, so let's talk clearinghouse we talk about in just a minute, but I like to put it in the driver file. So you're supposed to pull a full clearinghouse query on every driver before they get into a CDL vehicle. For all CDL drivers, only CDL drivers, not commercial drivers, okay? Just CDL drivers. You pull a clearinghouse query on it. It has to be a full query the first time. And then every year you're going to pull a limited query. Okay, so what we do is when we pull their MVR, we pull their limited query. And then it's all done. It's all done at the same time. And we fill out the annual review all at the same time. So the MVR, the clearinghouse query, the annual review, all that stuff, boom, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, we're done. All at the same time. And we make sure that it's a couple days before when it was done the year before. Because if there's any lapse in that time, you're considered non-compliant as well. Okay. Now, let's kind of jump into MCS 150s. This deals with your DOT number is what this deals with. Did y'all know that you have to update your DOT number every 2 years, right? Kind of crazy, right? You got to enter in how many miles you drove, how many drivers you have, what you're hauling, stuff like that. It's not complicated. It's not hard. Y'all can do it yourself. This QR code will take you to it. I just saved you about $200 from all the other companies in the world who want to charge you to do this. And I can promise you, you probably get letters in the mail every single month, even if you just updated it yesterday, and you're going to get text messages and emails that says, oh, you're out of compliance. You're in danger of fines of up to $10,000 a day. While all that stuff is true, you're probably not out of compliance. The companies that do that are, I'm going to be candid here for a second. They're very shystery. They're trying to get your money and trick you into something that you don't actually like. You're not actually out of compliance on, right? And they're lying to you. Maybe they don't know they're lying to you, but they're lying to you, okay? I think they know. Personally, if they're DOT experts, they should know that your DOT number gets done every 2 years. Like, if you have a question, if your DOT number needs to be updated, reach out to us, info@eclipsedot.com. We will check it for free. 100% no charge because you're here today. We'll check your DOT number and we'll tell you what it looks like, when it needs to be updated, if you're in danger of an audit, stuff like that. Like, we'll hook you guys up to make sure you're there, all at no charge. And if you get that letter and you're like, oh man, I don't know, please do not just be like, here's $200, update my DOT number. You can do it in like 10 minutes. It's not hard. I promise you. I probably have a YouTube video on how to do it, or a video somewhere on my social links on how to do it. Like, it's not hard, and you can totally do it in-house yourself. Please save that $200. Don't be scared. Do it yourself. And again, if you have questions on whether your DOT number is outdated or whether you need to update it, or you're getting those notices, like, reach out to our team. We'll be happy to like look at it for you for free and tell you what you need to do to be in compliance if you're missing anything. Okay. Awesome. IRP. Does anybody cross state lines with commercial, with like CDL vehicles? Probably, right? So if y'all do, you've got a couple options. One is you can go get IRP plates, International Registry Plan plates, okay? AKA also known as apportion plates. These guys, what you do is you file your mileage annually. They're only for vehicles that are over 26,000 pounds for most states. Some states are crazy, like New Mexico says 16,000 pounds. In Arizona, once you have IRP plates on vehicles over 12,000 pounds. But some states are different, okay? But for the most part, if you're not rated over 10,000 pounds, if you're not registered over 26,000 pounds, then you don't need IRP plates. So if your vehicle is like just a F550, okay, and it's rated at 19.5 and you're just crossing state lines, you probably don't need IRP plates most of the time, okay? Now you go hook up to a trailer with that 550, you go over 26,000 pounds, you're going to want apportion plates. If you don't have apportion plates, you're supposed to get fuel and trip permits every time you cross state lines, okay? That's what apportion plates does, is it gets rid of the trip permits you have to buy every time you cross state lines. Now, let's say that you're in Pennsylvania and you're like, I don't cross state lines that much, but I do it like 3 times a year. Don't go get apportion plates for those 3 trips. Just get a trip permit for those 3 trips that you make. It'll actually save you about a couple $100 by doing it that way, okay? Now, if you make more than about 5 trips a year, it's usually worth looking into IRP or apportion plates for your vehicles that are registered over 26,000 pounds, okay? Even if you register a vehicle at 26,000 pounds, even, like, that means you can't haul more than 26,000. Like, a vehicle can never weigh more than 26,000 pounds if that's what you register it at on anything, just so you guys are kind of aware of that. IRP is only in your home base state, so wherever you claim your home base to be, that's where you would get your IRP plates at. If you have questions on this stuff, we can totally help you out with it. We do IRP plates across the nation for companies and answer questions like, do I need them? Do I not need them? Like, all that kind of stuff. And then we can actually help you open accounts and file all this stuff for you as well. Like, we take care of it. IFTA. IFTA is the International Fuel Tax Agreement, okay? What IFTA is it gets rid of the fuel permit. So we just talked about buying a trip permit when you cross state lines if you don't have IRP. If you don't have IFTA, you're supposed to buy a fuel permit. Okay, anything that's rated over 26,000 pounds or registered over 26,000 pounds and crossing state lines should have an IFTA decal on it. Now, IFTA is very, very cheap. IFTA runs about $2.50 per truck per year for the sticker. Very cheap, okay? Now, what you do have to do with IFTA is you have to file all of your fuel, where it was purchased, how many gallons were purchased, in each state it was purchased in. And then you also have to report your mileage, how many miles you drove in each state quarterly. And what this does is this takes the fuel tax from each state and it kind of divvies it up. And sometimes you get a refund and sometimes you have to pay more. So like, let's say that, let's just use an example of Colorado and New Mexico. They're right next to each other. And I know their tax bases. Colorado's fuel tax base is higher than New Mexico's fuel tax base. So if I buy all of my fuel in Colorado and drive most of my miles in New Mexico, I'm going to get a refund because New Mexico has a lower fuel tax base. Now let's reverse it and let's go to California and Nevada. California's fuel tax is crazy high. Nevada's fuel tax is actually like the same as New Mexico's, okay? So let's say I buy all of my fuel in Nevada thinking I'm saving money, and I go drive a whole bunch of miles in California. Now then I'm actually going to have to pay every quarter fuel tax because most of my miles were driven in California and all of my fuel was bought at a lower tax base of Nevada. So what this does is this equals the tax base out for road construction and stuff like that. So IFTA is really not too complicated, but if you haven't done it before, it takes a little while to get in the habit of tracking everything. And so we help with IFTA as well. We help train drivers on like how to file it. We can help give you everything you need. If you haven't done it, if you're like, oh man, my IFTA is just hard to track, it's impossible, like we can help you simplify it where it's not hard, where it's super simple, and we actually file it on your behalf, which is crazy nice, okay? UCR, Unified Carrier Registration. This is done every year, and it's a federal, really, it's just another tax. Like, we're just going to be honest with you. It's just another tax for commercial vehicles for anybody that crosses state lines or operates in interstate commerce. And this is for all commercial vehicles, anything rated over 10,000 pounds. Now, you don't keep a copy of this license in the truck like you do IFTA and IRP. You just file it, right? And let's say that not all of your vehicles operate in interstate commerce. That would just simply mean that when you have a vehicle that only operates in intrastate commerce, that sorry, my mind thought about something else for a second. I apologize. That would mean that like you could just disqualify it from UCR. So you could actually file a different number. If you own 10 vehicles, but only 5 of them operate in interstate commerce, you would only have to buy licenses for 5 vehicles. Because this is broken down into numbers. It's like one vehicle, 2 to 4. Don't quote me on the numbers. Like 2 to 3, 4 to 6, 6 to 12, 12 to 20. So like you buy different sections and it costs more for how many of the vehicles that are in there. Be forewarned, if you do buy a different amount than what matches what your DOT number says you have, you could potentially be audited and you would have to prove that the vehicles didn't operate in interstate commerce and which vehicles were under the UCR license and which ones weren't. So you just need to track that. It's not a big deal. Don't overthink it. You just need to track it like on a spreadsheet, okay? All right. The next thing is drug testing. Y'all need a break or should we just keep going? We got like a half hour left, right? Let's keep rolling. How's that sound? Okay, drug testing program. Drug testing is only for CDL drivers. Commercial drivers that are non-CDL are not required to go through a drug testing program, okay? So just so you guys are aware, we talked about the difference between CDL drivers and commercial drivers earlier. Only commercial drivers are, no, only, man, I can't even talk anymore. I'm sorry, guys. Only CDL drivers are required to go through drug testing for initial drug tests and clearinghouse and randoms, okay? So you've got to have an initial drug test for that CDL driver. It's called a new oh my gosh, brain fart. It's like a new hire CDL drug test. That's not what it's called. But it's when you hire a driver. Now, if you're going to promote somebody and they're going to get their permit with you, you actually give them, you do a new employment drug test with them when they get their permit. So even though they're already employee, you're going to do a new hire DOT drug test with them when they go from a commercial driver to getting their permit. So if you're helping people get their CDLs, they get their drug test when they get their permit. Okay, even if they already work for you, you don't do that initial CDL drug test, that DOT drug test, until they get their permit. You can drug test them at any point, okay? But you can't do a DOT drug test until they get their permit and they start operating CDL vehicles for you. And they can't operate a CDL vehicle until the results have returned negative on that drug test. Okay, cool. You've got to have them in a random program. So you have to have proof that you're enrolled in a random program. A lot of times these are called consortiums or consortiums. Depends on how you want to say the word. I say it either way. Sometimes I say it both ways in the same sentence. What that is that's a group of people that you're enrolled with. You can have your own consortium, which is your own company, or you can be enrolled in a global consortium, which is multiple companies. Depending on the size of your company, I highly recommend a global consortium because it will actually give you less drug tests you have to do throughout the year. So what that means is that like they're pulling out, like let's say you have 2 drivers and you've got to pull 51% of drug tests in order to be random. Both your people would have to be pulled for drug tests throughout that year in order to meet the minimums. So you would actually drug test more. Whereas if you're in a global consortium with, let's say, 100 drivers, then only 50 of those drivers are going to be pulled for random drug tests. Well, in our group, it's like 52 drivers because we always make sure we're over 50%. So only 52 drivers out of that 100 would be pulled for randoms. So the chances of you getting pulled for a random with your employees is a little bit lower. Now, the reason this is better is because the odds are a little bit better for you. You may not have that extra cost of, say, $60, $70 for a drug test every single quarter as it comes up. So right now, and they can change these percentages. A minimum of 50% drug tests in the consortium have to be pulled. A minimum of 10% alcohol tests have to be done as well. And as a company, you should be getting an annual report called an MIS report, okay? And this is just a report from the drug testing company giving you their numbers. And they can provide this to you. Like you can ask for it at any time and then give it to you for up to date for the year. Now, the thing to keep in mind with drug testing is it is the company's responsibility to ensure that you're hitting the minimum randoms for the year. The reason I say this is because we actually had a company, not one of ours. We know of a company that got audited, okay? And they went through their drug testing pool and they found out that they were only pulling 48% of randoms. So 48% of the pool was getting randomed instead of 50%. And what happened was the company got the $10,000 fine that goes with not following that random drug testing. Okay. So it's a big deal in order to make sure that you keep up with that and you track it. And that's why us as a company, like when we do drug testing for other people, when we help them out, we make sure that we're doing 52%. We do like 1 or 2% over what's required because we do not want to let our people down at all. So like right now we're pulling 52% of drug and 11% of alcohol because it's like 2 more people, right? Like it's not a big deal to get to that 52%. If it's 100 people, you pull 2 more people. For us, it's 1,000. So we pull like 20 more people to do it in a year, but it's not hard to get over that 20%, okay, to get over that 50%. Now, I recommend that you update your driver's list with whoever's doing your consortium on a quarterly basis, okay? I know it says monthly, but quarterly is probably the best one. Now, I want to talk a little bit about a drug test policy. When's the last time y'all actually looked through your drug test policies? Have y'all reviewed them recently? Does anybody know when theirs was updated last? It's probably been a couple days. It's not something that's on the front of our mind, right? Like we write policies, they're policies for our company and they stay. Well, I will tell you that your drug test policy, I want you to go look at it. I want you to see when it was last reviewed. If it was not reviewed since 2020, then you need to consider reviewing it. Well, actually, I'm going to scratch that. My professional advice is get it reviewed like ASAP. So in 2020, that's when the clearinghouse took effect. And your drug test policy should talk about the clearinghouse. If it doesn't, you need to get it updated, okay? Especially if you have commercial drivers, even if they're non-CDL commercial drivers, you're still required to have a drug test policy, okay? And your employees are required to sign off on the drug test policy. But if it doesn't talk about the clearinghouse in it, I want you guys to take a little bit of time and check out your drug test policy. So on your to-do list, if you're writing down stuff to do, like, have Dan check out our DOT number, go through our DQ files. I want you to put on here, see when my drug test policy was updated last, and search for the word clearinghouse in my drug test policy, okay? If it's not in there, even if it was updated a month ago, if the word clearinghouse is not in your drug test policy, you need to update it again, okay? Post-accident drug testing. This is a very confusing topic. And because it's so confusing, we built a decision tree for it, which you can see on the side of the screen. The decision tree makes it super simple to go through this. And here's the thing with post-accident drug testing. If you don't do it correctly, you're putting your company in liability situation of thousands of dollars in fines. If you give somebody a drug test at post-accident because they hurt their hand, but it's not a DOT drug post-accident, like let's say that you go give somebody, they're a CDL driver and they hurt their hand while using their truck, and you give them a post-accident DOT drug test, you could be what's called tainting the pool, and those comes with pretty high fines. Most drug test fines start around like $2,800, and they go up to the tens of thousands of dollars depending on what it is per occurrence. Okay, so you want to make sure, like, you can still drug test that person if they hurt their hand. That's your policy, is to drug test after any accident. Totally cool, no problems with that. It's actually encouraged, but make sure it's a non-DOT post-accident drug test. So there's a difference between DOT and non-DOT. And you just need to make sure when you take them in that you're getting the correct one, because you definitely don't want a DOT drug test for a non-DOT accident. Now, there's only 4 reasons. There's really, this decision tree tells you if you should do a DOT post-accident drug test. If your driver is involved in any accident, no matter if he's at fault or she's at fault or not, and there's a fatality, somebody perishes in the accident, heaven forbid, okay, you drug test your driver. Period. Point blank in the story. If they're on an interstate and there's a 50-car pileup because there's ice, and that driver is in the middle of that accident and there's a fatality in that accident, your driver gets drug tested. Point blank in the story. Even if they didn't cause it, even if they didn't hit the car that has a fatality in it, because there's a fatality in that accident, your driver gets drug tested. Okay? Second, this is where it gets a little bit more confusing. Okay? No fatality. Your driver's in an accident and they receive a citation at the scene. Okay? At the scene, the officer writes your driver a citation. All right? That proves he's at fault. She's at fault. Okay? Next, this is an and or situation. So the driver gets a citation and a vehicle is towed from the scene. So any vehicle is towed. The car that they hit is so bad that it gets towed from the scene. Okay, the car that hit them is so bad it gets towed from the scene. So the driver gets a citation and a vehicle is towed. Now here comes the or part. Okay, the driver gets a citation and somebody is transported from the hospital. So the or part is that somebody's transported from the scene by emergency personnel or a vehicle is towed. So, okay, let's go through an example. All right, your driver's in an accident, somebody T-boned him. Boom. Okay, driver's not at fault. He does not get a ticket. But the person in the car is taken to the hospital and their car is towed. Your driver still does not get a drug test because he was not cited. Okay, that's where the and comes into place. So federal regulations are really hard. If it says and, then it ties it together. And then if it says or, it's like one of the two. Okay, so okay, let's do another one. Your driver gets into an accident, he hits a car. Boom. Okay, car's hit. One car is towed from the scene, but nobody's transported. Your driver receives a citation because he or she was at fault. The driver gets post-accident drug tested because they got a citation and somebody was transported from the scene. Okay. One more example. Your driver's in an accident. Boom. Okay. They get a citation. No cars are towed. Nobody's transported from the scene by emergency personnel. Drug test, yes or no? The answer is no, because nobody was transported from the scene and no cars were towed. Does that kind of make sense? A little confusing still? I know. This one's really confusing. The decision tree helps a lot. I'll tell you what happens a lot with us. Our customers will get into an accident and they'll text us and they'll be like, hey, my guy just got into an accident. What do I do? And we just ask you simple questions. Did your guy get a ticket? Nope. Cool. Did anybody perish in the accident? Was there a fatality? No. Cool. Okay. Did your guy get a ticket? No. Cool. No drug test. That's simple. We just tell you, you don't have to post-accident drug test DOT. No DOT post-accident drug test. Okay? Does that make sense? Kind of makes it a little simpler when you have somebody who actually knows the answers on your team, right? I know. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is reasonable suspicion training. Reasonable suspicion training is required to have at least one supervisor trained. We recommend every supervisor gets trained. Okay. This is something that's all about drug and alcohol awareness is really what it is. It's so that the supervisor can make sure that they can tell when somebody's using or not using. Okay. So it's reasonable suspicion that they might be using, and then how to document and stuff like that. Now, every supervisor that runs trucks or that oversees drivers, commercial drivers in general, should be trained in reasonable suspicion. The law says that only one person within the company must be trained. As long as you have one person that's trained, you're golden. Okay. So my suggestion on this is to do it every couple of years. Update about every 3 years. And here's the reason why I recommend to do a refresher or to update your reasonable suspicion every 3 years. 5 years ago, bath salts weren't a thing. Y'all may not know this, but people are eating like ivory bath salts and turning into zombies. Okay. Like they get cannibalists, they act like they have rabies, stuff like that. That 5 years ago, that was just barely out there. Now it's pretty prevalent, right? It happens more and more. And it's not like a drug test that you actually test for, but it's something that you want to be aware of. And so if you're not getting a refresher every couple of years, you might still think that you may not understand that there's different levels of marijuana out there. There's different levels of THC that comes out there. Like there's the really high level stuff and there's more mediocre stuff now that it's been legalized in so many states. Okay. And so understanding that, what that kind of looks like is really huge. All right. This is a free gift to you again, man. We're just giving away the bank here. This is another free gift to you guys. This is a video. If you're worried about clearinghouse, if your drivers don't know how to do it, this video will walk your driver through how to set up an account and how to literally press the button that says I consent for the first initial query that you do. Okay. So what we do is we send this video to everybody and we're like, here, watch this, right? Every single driver we onboard, we say, hey, watch this video and do this. If you have questions, call us. Okay. So this is just something else I can give you guys because it's like a 6-minute video. It's great for drivers to walk through the clearinghouse if they have questions about it. It's not in depth. Like it doesn't go into the weeds. It's literally like, hey, click here, enter in this. This is what your minimum password has to be. Like it has to have this many characters, this stuff. And then here's where you go to press this button. Here's where you go to press this button. And this is what you have to do. It doesn't give them anything extra. It's like no fluff, straight to the point. Okay. We've already talked about clearinghouse. I'm not going to talk about it much more. This is what's required for vehicle maintenance files. You got to have all this could be on a list. Okay. The big thing to remember here that you need to know, the one thing that I want to point out is the last 2 annual DOT inspections. Keep in mind that commercial vehicles are not only the truck, but the trailers too. So if you have a trailer that's coupled together, even if it's under 10,000 pounds, equals a commercial vehicle with your truck, it's required to have the same file that your truck is required to have. All commercial vehicles. So remember, commercial vehicle is anything that's rated over 10,000 pounds that crosses state lines. Okay. The craziest one on here is tire size. Why we have to have tire size documented, only heaven knows. But it's required. Okay. And then make sure that all of your trucks and trailers have annual DOT inspections. I will tell you, if you have somebody who has experience wrenching, you can do your own annual DOT inspections in-house. 100% legit, super easy to do. If y'all are interested in learning more about what that takes, don't hesitate to reach out, okay? We'll do anything we can to help you guys out, get you on the right page. This is kind of what our vehicle list looks like within DotDocs. You can see kind of how it has unit number, VIN number, license plate number, GVWR, tire size, what company they work for. When you look into this and if you start using DotDocs, you would only have your companies. You're not going to see like everybody that we house in there because that would just be way too confusing. So you only see your guys' stuff, but that's kind of what our list looks like. Okay. I want to pause for a second. We got like 15 minutes left, right? Christina, is my watch right? Cool. Is there any questions? Is there anybody they want to ask before we kind of jump into like this last summary part? I'm just going to breeze through some of this. If y'all have any questions, I'd love to answer them though. I've done such a good job. Nobody has any questions, or I've confused them all and put them all to sleep. I don't know which one it is.
No, I think it's a lot of great information. Yeah.
Cool.
I'll
Cool.
get
Cool.
rolling.
Well, if y'all have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. I'm actually going to get down here to a title slide in just a little bit so you guys can kind of see a little bit what it is. We had this company one time. They called us to come in and they're a tow company. And when you run tow companies and you want to be on State Patrol's list, you have to get audited every single year. So the first year they got it audited, they weren't actually using our services. And they got audited, and the State Patrol's like, yeah, you should call this Dan guy. These guys help a lot of companies out in this area. I bet they can get you on the right page. He's like, I'm not supposed to do this, but like these guys have their stuff dialed. And so they called us the next year. And so like the first year, their audit took them about 45 minutes, right? Well, no, about 45 minutes with the auditor, but it took them like 5 days of preparation to get ready for that audit. And then they called us after the audit, about halfway through the year. Well, actually, let me recant that last statement. They called us a week before their next audit, and they're like, "Oh, we're getting audited in a week. Can you help us?" And so my team like jumped through hoops, got everything taken care of, and we got them. And their audit this time was like a week's worth of work instead of like a month's worth of effort trying to get there. Okay, and it really wasn't a lot of effort for them because we did most of the heavy lifting. The auditor comes in, is like, "Oh, this looks great," and the audit took 25 minutes. Okay, every year since then, the auditor doesn't even come to their site. He's like, "Oh, you work with these guys? Cool. Email me their stuff." And so we email the stuff to him, and the auditor's like, "Yep, you're good." He signs off on them, and they're good to go. Didn't realize how quick and easy it was, right? They didn't understand how much time they would have in their business just by simply working with somebody who had the answers, by simply going through and getting that trusted advisor on their side. I had one customer one time. They're a trash company, so like they go pick up trash and refuge. And Rachel's really funny. She cracks me up when we chat. She's like, "Yeah, I watched you at this conference, and I thought, oh, I've got to talk to this guy because he was the dude who was like making the federal government like question their answers as they were asking them. Like he was like asking questions that they couldn't answer." She's like, "I need this guy on my team. This is like the guy that I need to have on the back end." And then her comment to me like a year later was, she's like, "You know, Dan, DOT, I didn't realize how complicated it was. Like we ran trash trucks for like my dad had this company and now I've got it. We've ran trash trucks for like years. And you know what we didn't realize? We didn't realize that you're like a CPA, but for DOT, like there's so much back end regulation that you like, we don't even worry about now. You're just like, hey, Dan, we hired this guy. And you're just like, boom, sweet. You shoot us an email that says he's good to go and he's good to go. Right. And so she's like, man, I sleep so much better at night knowing that like I don't have to worry about DOT anymore. This is a crazy huge number. This is a real number. You guys have got to hear this. So 2022. So it actually went up to 26 million in 2023. I should probably update this slide. 2022, there's $25,698, well, $431 assessed in fines just with audits. This isn't roadside violations. This isn't traffic stops. This is from when somebody came in and audited them. That's only 3,600 companies. Do the math. That's a lot of money per company. Okay. $26 million. Now, last year, it was like 3,100 companies and it was $26 million, $26.9 million or some crap like that. So it was almost $27 million. So far this year, as of August 1st, so they haven't even done August yet. So through July, the first 7 months of the year, they've already assessed over $20 million in fines and audits. That's a lot of money, okay? That's a ton of money. Now, this one, I like to pause for just a second and let y'all read some of this and kind of go through some of this. This is a lot of great facts that come, and they don't do this study every year. That's why this is a 2016 model. I know you're like, Dan, it's almost 10 years old. Yeah, they do the study every 10 years. So we're stuck using outdated data until they renew it. But when we look at this, like I want to just give you guys an example. A heavy truck to them is anything over 10,000 pounds. It's any commercial vehicle. So we're not just talking about semis. We're talking about anything over 10,000 pounds. So any type of commercial vehicle is all. Now, there's a lot of statistics on here. There's a lot of data on here. And some of y'all probably operate in a few of those states that are in the yellow where it's higher, right? Where 51% of accidents result in fatalities when you've got a commercial vehicle involved. Okay. That's pretty big, right? Now, again, y'all are going to get more time to look at this in depth in the PDF version, so I'm not going to give you a lot of information on it. This one, I don't know if y'all heard about this. There was actually an accident. It happened in Colorado a couple years ago. A truck driver, he chose not to go down a runaway truck ramp. He wasn't trained correctly. There was 4 people that never went home that day from that accident because he chose to bypass 2 runaway truck ramps as he went down the road. There are 6 people that got to go home but were very seriously injured from it. This driver was sentenced to 110 years in prison. But what nobody talks about with this accident is what happened to the company. The company's owner was actually held personally responsible for this driver being on the road. Okay. 49 counts against them. Out of those 49 counts, there were 41 felonies against this driver. His driving career is over. This company no longer exists. Like, you can go back and look it up, but it's just crazy. And it's just so sad what happened. When we talk a little bit about liabilities, Werner, I know they're a giant trucking company, but they had one accident in Texas that led to over $100 million coming out of their pocket, out of their budget to be awarded. $100 million is a lot of money. Okay. This is just a few numbers. Like, the average accident that has a fatality in it costs a company over $7.2 million. My question is like, is your insurance set up to cover you for $7 million? Probably not, right? Probably not on an accident with a fatality in it. If it is, amazing. I'm not telling you to go up your insurance. I don't sell insurance. I don't want you to do that. I want you to focus on what you can do to prevent fatalities. Okay, what can you do? Can you train your drivers? Can you train them slightly differently? Can you bring in a third party to like talk to them? I'll tell you what I've learned. Okay, I don't know. Do any of y'all have kids? Do your kids listen to you when you tell them, hey, don't touch the stove, the stove's hot? What do? They go and they touch the stove because they don't trust you that it's hot, right? Well, some kids do. Okay, not all of them. Employees are kind of the same way. If you say don't touch the stove's hot, they're going to go put their hand next to the stove to feel how hot it is. Okay. But when you bring somebody in who's outside source, it's crazy because, like, my kids, I guarantee, if Christina came and talked to my kids and she's like, hey, that stove's hot, my kids are going to be like, hey, that stove's hot. Don't touch that stove. They're going to tell everybody else that the stove is hot, right? Even though they may not know Christina, because they're like, oh, hey, she's an authority figure on stoves being hot. Like, she knows a lot about this. They're going to listen to her better than they listen to me as their parents. Sometimes companies are the same way. And so it's something to kind of think about. Like, what can you do to prevent this from happening to you? Okay. We talked about this one. I'm going to kind of skip through this. This was a second audit and stuff like that. This is a tow company, 5 years, no issue. Trooper calls us directly, less than 30 minutes in audit. They got zero stress every time they do it. Not an issue at all anymore. I just want to help you guys discover that, like, the regulations are complicated, but when you have the right people, when you have the right tools, when you have the right resources, it's really simple to be in compliance, and it doesn't cost your company a ton of money. And that's really what I'm after, is like helping you upgrade from where you're currently at and helping give you more time in your day, right? You can build a house with a rock. You can go hammer nails with a rock and build a house. It's going to be kind of ugly when you get done. It's going to take you a really long time. Or you can have a nail gun and an air compressor. That's 100% up to you, right? You can do it however you want to do it, right? You can do it the hard way or you can do it the easy way, okay? My big thing is, like, our team right now is more than 2 people. We manage over 2,000 drivers on a daily basis, and our compliance rating is high 90s all the time. I'm going to be honest with you. It's never 100% with everybody because there's certain people who just refuse to give you their med card. They like refuse to send it to you. They refuse to send you a driver's license. So we don't ever claim like 100% compliance on it, but we have a lot of companies that are at 100% compliance that we manage. 100%. And they get to see it through the dashboard, which is crazy cool. With that being said, that's where DocDoc steps into place, and that's that dashboard. It's absolutely amazing. My recommendation is for the cost, if you guys are interested in something like that, get with us. You can go look at the website if you want to. I'm all about it. Go check it out. But reach out to the Eclipse DOT team because we offer something called effortless compliance that's way easier on you. You don't do any of it yourself. You literally just shoot our people an email and you're like, hey, we hired this person, and then we get you onboarded. Start with your free micro audit and then kind of go from there. What questions do you guys have? I'm gonna like pause because we got like 5 minutes. I want to give Christina time to do stuff. I didn't realize I talked so dang much. So thanks for listening if y'all are here. And yeah, I'll give the floor over to Christina and you guys can answer any questions you want to answer or ask.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. This was great. Lots of wonderful information. Very applicable, obviously, through everything you explained to what we do. Some of the firms are on the smaller side. They may only have, one or two eligible vehicles, depending on, if it's just father-son duo or whatnot. It still has to have the same requirements and data, correct?
Nothing changes no matter how big you are, whether you have one driver or 10,000 drivers, the requirements are the same. And I'll be honest with you, like the way that we work is it's very easy to work. Like we work with a lot of companies that have 1 or 2 employees, and we work with a lot of companies that have 20 employees. And so everybody has to have the same information, even if you're just one CDL driver or one commercial driver that's non-CDL.
Okay. I don't see anyone unmuting, but don't take their silence as this is not informative. A lot of great information, and I've been getting text messages. So,
good or bad text messages?
More, both, but not bad about your presentation. More
like good.
They may be communicating with you.
Oh, cool. Well, we'll get this set up for you guys so you can have in a PDF. I'm actually doing a Train the Trainer boot camp for CDL training today. I've been in Albuquerque for the last 3 days doing this. So I'm so glad that this worked out. I'm so glad to be here. But if you'd give me a couple days to get this presentation to you so you can get it out, Christina, I'd really appreciate it. But I'll have it to you at the beginning of the week so you can send it to everybody with some contact information and stuff like that.
That'd be great. I'll send out the recording with it. Appreciate it. Thank you for being with us this morning. And this does conclude course 3 for our virtual education. I'll see everybody next Thursday for History of Drilling, which will conclude our summer track. Thank you, Daniel.
Awesome. Thanks for having us. Have a great day, guys.
Sure. Thanks. Great presentation.
Thank you so much.